Welcome back to Left in the Dark. I'm Q, and we're going to go over Trump's second week in office.
I'm working outside.
Penny X.
If you're new to my channel, I'm documenting the Trump administration's accomplishments each week, along with other political commentary. If you want to stay informed and make the best voting decisions, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube and make sure you follow me on all social media, including Facebook and X, for real-time updates. Now let's get into this week's news. So it's becoming increasingly clear that the U.S. government has a major spending problem. The U.S. spends on average about $16.9 billion a day, totaling about $6.168 trillion a year. Our GDP is $27.36 trillion, but our national debt is nearing $37 trillion. That means that every 30 seconds, the national debt rises on average by about $1.2 million. Bearing this in mind, we're faced with about two options. One, we can allow the United States to fail and go into default, which would mean economic collapse, total bedlam, loss of things like Medicare, Social Security, and other social programs, along with the defunding of law enforcement and most of our military. Or we can cut back on spending, identify the waste, fraud, and abuse that's taking place at the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve, and put an end to the deep state use of our taxpayer money to fund everything from wars to terrorism. Now, Trump is moving surprisingly fast this time around, and these are all things that he wanted to do his first time around in office, but was hindered at every turn by the Democratic Party launching frivolous lawsuits his way. But thanks to Doge and what they've uncovered at the Federal Reserve and at the Treasury, he's been able to concoct several executive orders that can kind of turn this ship around. These orders that he signed this week included cutting taxpayer-funded programs for non-contributors, i.e. lazy people who don't want to work and that are able-bodied, and illegal immigrants who are working here illegally and then not paying into the tax pool, ending costly foreign wars, renegotiating unfair trade deals, tariffing countries that have exploited the U.S., Canada, Mexico, eliminating DEI hiring practices in the federal government, and ending subsidies to hostile nations like Afghanistan and Iran. Yeah, the U.S. Treasury was found to have been sending money regardless of the destination, including known terrorist organizations, like in countries like Iran. Now, I get often called a conspiracy theorist for a variety of reasons, but the only conspiracy that's happening is in the U.S. Treasury. These people have blatantly stolen, lied, and then gaslighted you for decades now. And nobody up until this point has been able to stop them but Doge. And to combat this, Trump signed another executive order declaring a federal hiring freeze, another ending DEI hiring across the entire federal government, and then one that instructed Doge and Elon Musk to audit the U.S. Treasury and lock out these bureaucrats from just transferring funds willy-nilly. This led to the resignation of a man by the name of David A. Lebrick, who was responsible for $6 trillion in spending yearly. And funnily enough, his predecessor, a man by the name of Adewale Adeyemo, is a former Obama Foundation president. Thanks, dude. That was really cool. I can't say that I'm shocked, but anyways, let's move on. Trump signed another executive order withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization. Yeah, the same World Health Organization that backed the Wuhan lab leak that started the pandemic. And then after they jump-started it, they pushed and forced vaccines that ended up killing millions of people worldwide. Trump then went on to pull the security detail for a number of big-name deep state players, including but not limited to Anthony Fauci and General Mark Milley, who, if you remember, offered U.S. military secrets to China. Yeah, that's treason, punishable by death, but I don't think he cares. A Black Hawk helicopter crashed into a commercial airliner this week, killing 64 commercial passengers and 3 military personnel. It's now being speculated that this occurred after the unit commander authorized the Black Hawk helo to take flight knowing full well that they didn't have a left side crew chief, preventing the crew from noticing the airliner on their left flank. In the aftermath of this tragic event, instead of real questions, liberal reporters wasted absolutely no time asking nonsense. This is how President Trump handled this exchange. It's just too good.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site or meet with any of the
I have a
first
plan
responders?
to visit, not the site, because you tell me, what's the site? The water?
Or to meet
You
with
want
the
me to go
first
swimming?
responder?
Yeah, that was pretty stupid. Next up on the list, thanks to Trump's ICE crackdown, 8,000 illegal immigrant criminals have successfully been detained and deported within the U.S. confines. With almost 570 daily being deported by force and thousands per month self-deporting, this is looking good for the new administration. Trump faced some backlash from a couple of South American countries, though, on taking back their criminals that they purposely sent to the U.S. southern border. So Trump spanked them with threats of tariffs, which we now know forced Colombia and Venezuela to take back their criminals, and they even offered to pay for their airfare. God, it feels good for our country to be back in charge. Scott Bessent, Trump's Secretary of the Treasury, was almost assassinated. Why? Because he's working with those to expose where all the money's going. No surprises there, and we're glad that he's safe. 3 more of Trump's cabinet nominees face Senate hearings this week, including Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and RFK Jr. Starting with Kash Patel, this man's family fled from communism in Uganda, and now he's taking down the deep state. He obliterated every single corrupt Democrat during this hearing, but the most memorable was probably this exchange with Amy Klobuchar.
Read the rest of the interview. This is why snippets of information are often misleading and detrimental to this committee's advice and consent process.
If you consent, I would love to have 5 hours of questions, and then I could read the whole transcript.
You've got 2 minutes.
Wow.
Next up on the list was Tulsi Gabbard. This woman has an incredible political history. She's a combat veteran and a current sitting Army National Guard lieutenant colonel. Her hearing wasn't that special, though, considering all that happened was the Democrats sat there and screamed at her and didn't allow her to answer a single question without being interrupted. Surprise, surprise. And then finally, we had RFK Jr., a lifelong warrior against the big pharma industry. RFK Jr. struck down many of the points that the Democrats leveled at him. In the end, though, it all backfired on him when during the hearing he called them out for their blatant corruption and left them speechless. Among the most notable that he called out were Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders for taking millions from the pharmaceutical industry in bribes. Check out these exchanges. It's about to get awesome.
Guaranteed, do what every other major country does. It's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no,
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money
contributions from workers all over this country. Workers,
you were the
not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
PACs.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right, but you have not answered.
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You and I, you have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
Look.
You can clearly see that these people clearly have something to hide. It's just funny watching the Democrats flounder like this, especially after everything that they've done to Donald Trump. Now, there's a lot happening daily with this administration. Back to back to back to back executive orders, completely obliterating all the Democratic frivolous lawsuits. This is only the beginning, and there's a lot more clearly coming down the pike. There is no longer a so-called conspiracy theory. It's happening right before your eyes. It's not my fault if you don't like what your party's doing and what they have been doing to our country. More things are coming to light every single hour, and the deep state bad actors can't even keep up. So just for good measure, here's a recap of everything that we went over in this video. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow me on all my socials. And we'll see you next week with next week's Trump Presidential Rewind. So let's get this straight. The deep state has been stealing taxpayer money for decades. The Democratic Party, being the U.S. arm of the deep state, has successfully entrenched rogue bureaucrats at every level of government through programs such as DEI. The former president of the Obama Foundation was installed as Joe Biden's deputy secretary to the Treasury, where they freely handed out money to known terrorist organizations and non-governmental organizations that actively worked against America's sovereignty. Since he announced his intentions to run again for president in 2022, the deep state has weaponized the courts, the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, and woke military personnel to steer the media narrative to distract the American people from their covert plans to destroy our country. You know, with the usual globalist playbook: lies, corruption, propaganda, money laundering, fake coups, gaslighting, assassination attempts, all in a pathetic effort to lead to the economic collapse of the United States, hand over the country to the World Economic Forum, and successfully install the New World Order. But it only took one little mistake for this web of lies to come crashing down. Little did they know that their brilliant plan to try and assassinate Donald Trump on July 13th, 2024 before would fail miserably, thus leaving them utterly embarrassed and unprepared for what would follow. First, the Republican Party would go on to completely dominate the general election, shifting every single county in the country to the right, giving them a majority in all three branches of government. Next, he'd fire all their puppets in our federal government that oppose the America First agenda and want to destroy our country. Next, he'd revoke the security clearances of the bad actors within our intelligence agencies so that they no longer had access to the information needed to relay back to the globalists, our foreign adversaries, and the rest of the global elite. Then he would strip DEI out of our military and federal government to restore competency, logic, and sound reasoning back into the system. Next, he would impose tariffs on our neighbors to the north and south, economically crushing them so that the US could acquire Canada, Greenland, and successfully increase our resources, our territory, and our population, while at the same time discouraging other countries from electing globalist Marxist pansy leaders like Justin Trudeau, and then to absolutely decimate the Mexican cartels that are poisoning our communities with drugs, violent crime, and human and sex trafficking, and in the end, stifling Chinese partnership and control over Mexico and the South American nations. Next, Trump would set a record with the number of executive orders that override the bureaucracy of Congress and implement his policies immediately and force bad actors to challenge them in court one at a time. At every turn, he knew that the Democrats would propagandize his every move, trying to convince the unaware public that he was leading our country astray. So he had his team of experts contrive backup plans to the backup plans, utterly destroying the enemy's backup plans, enabling them to blitz them with order after order, not allowing them time to sue his administration in a timely manner, enabling his administration to barrel through every legal blockade and frivolous lawsuit that they would launch in his path. Next, he would completely overhaul our intelligence agencies and the DOJ, including the FBI and CIA, and rid them of the bad actors that undermined his every move. Then he would put his team at Doge into action by surprise auditing the US Treasury, where he would identify every bit of rampant waste, fraud, and abuse that the deep state has been using to weaponize the United States against itself. Then he would freeze all federal funding and completely lock out all the faceless bureaucrats that were sending ridiculous amounts of taxpayer money all over the world. He then withdrew from all global organizations and removed the US from the grip of the global elites that want to destroy our country. Now that the pieces are all in place and he's only been in charge for 2 weeks, he is going to begin investigations surrounding all the deep state politicians, business leaders, celebrities, and traders that have undermined the US and sold our secrets to our adversaries, exposing them, convicting them, and locking them up for the harm that they have done against our country. Finally, he will get Congress to pass laws imposing term limits on members of Congress so that this level of fraud, corruption, and treason involved in the second branch of government will never again be possible, completely destroying the Democratic Party, crippling the global elite power structure, and stripping China of its comparable economic power position on the world stage in the process, successfully returning the United States to its rightful place as the freest, richest, and most powerful country the world has ever known. Only this time, it will be permanent. Believe me when I say that no one, and I mean no one, can stop what is coming.